número 4.
Let's,
Please select from the...
okay, there, turn off Vicky there. Okay. If I'm going to go kind of rapid speed here. I'll just mention if you ever have a question about disclosure and you want to ask my opinion, just email me, copy in Steve. I'll email you back. There's no cost at all. I do that every day. So let's get in kind of rapid fire here on the visual inspection. Assuming that everybody there, correct me if I'm wrong, uses the AVID form. It's it's not a mandatory form, but it's most agents in California use it. And it does say, as I've circled there, that we do a visual inspection. So a question that might arise is, does that mean that the only things you're going to disclose are things that you can, with your eyes actually look at? And the answer to that is actually no. Even though it does say visual inspection on the form, in court it's interpreted as any sensory perception. So, for example, you're doing your Avid thing and it's a 2-story home, let's say. You're upstairs, and as you're walking the hallway, you get the impression that the floor is maybe a little, if it's majorly uneven, that's different, but just a touch, maybe a little bit, you're not sure. Well, you can't see it, but it still would be a disclosure issue, kind of a lightweight one, like upstairs floor appears to have some unevenness or something. Probably not going to bother the buyers. If they check it out, they're not going to really come up with anything, but it's not a visual disclosure, but it should be made. And then you're down in the kitchen and you pick up some kind of an unusual smell and maybe kind of musty. Well, you don't want to say musty or write that down because that's really outside of our standard of care. But you do notice it. And, we've all heard of these kitchen horror stories where the buyers have to move out for like a month while they redo the kitchen and tear out all the walls. So we do want to make a disclosure, but we just have to do it carefully. And that would just be obvious odor noted, or you don't want to say mildew. That's too analytical. That's too tied into water, or maybe something else. But just say odor noted in kitchen. Keep it rather vague that way, but still make a disclosure. And by the way, when I'm done or shortly after I'm done, I will email to your office to Steve a set of notes that I've been developing for 32 years, and it's got a lot of this information, and I'll get that off to you. So it's really, even though we think of it as a visual inspection and brief, and it is brief, it's really multi-sensory. We really are responsible for anything we pick up by hearing it, by smelling it, by balance or whatever. The two primary categories, however, that we look at are defects and red flags. So I think we all know what they are, but just a real quick definition, like the kitchen window's broken, like here, let's say. A great disclosure would just be cracked window. It's not a big crack, small crack. We definitely don't say it's cracked because a frisbee hit it or something like that. Just cracked window. The fewest words we could use to convey what's there, because the fewer words we use, the less chance there's going to be an objection, and we are getting the message across. Now I'm in the family room and I notice a stain like this. And let's say the present owners it was like that when they moved in, or, whatever the history is. Well, I don't want to call it a water stain. It could be from wine stored in the attic. It could be from a rodent problem. I don't really know, and I don't care. I mean, I care in terms of the deal, but I don't care in terms of the way I word it. So just simply stain noted at ceiling. It's not big. It's not from water. It's just stain noted, and that covers it. If there was a window right below there, I might say stain noted at ceiling near window or something like that. But we want to make it brief. We want to get the message across. We want to make the disclosure. But when we add details to it, they can be disputed, but nobody can dispute that there's a stain there. And it's not big, it's not small, just a stain. There are lots of challenges. I will just mention two for sake of time. I'm in the living room, still doing the Avid, and I just can't find anything to say. I mean, it looks great. Well, I'm not going to write down that it looks great, but it does look great. A mistake that some agents make is they're just looking for something to write down. There's a ceiling fan, like ceiling fan noted. Well, the ceiling fan is inventory. It's not the condition of the property. And whether the ceiling fan's staying or not staying, that doesn't make any difference in disclosure. But it is not a defect or red flag. It's inventory, so to speak, a furnishing. So we don't want to fall into that trap. And I'll give you some solutions in the notes you'll get on this. The other challenge of many is like you're in the master bedroom and it looks fine, looks great. You've got nothing really to comment on, which is okay. Nothing noted is a great thing to write down. Doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. It's just within my standard of care at the level that I'm disclosing, there really isn't anything to say, and that's going to be very common. But some agents feel an obligation to find something in every room, and the little spider web up in the corner, it doesn't rise to the level of something that really deserves a disclosure. I mean, if they're all over the place, that's different, but the typical spider web in the corner, not a big deal. So the best expression I have ever seen in my many years of doing this is nothing noted. So there is a living room. I did look around. I didn't see anything really worthy of disclosure. So I'm not saying there's nothing wrong and nothing to comment, just within my standard of care for the avid, don't really see anything to mention. And it's very common for homes that are kept up well. Okay. Next, the visual inspection. What do you do when you're in a home that's in such pristine condition that you've really done a conscientious job with the avid, which again is limited, and there's just nothing to say. I mean, just like everything looks fine. So the question that I get a lot is they'll say, well, Robert, the home's in just great shape. I've got nothing noted everywhere. It looks like I never showed up. So other than breaking a window, something that we can do is most of the homes, I cover the whole state. I live in Southern California, but I cover the whole state. So depending on where the home is, and I know where you live is unique to many other parts of the majority of the rest of California. But stucco on the left is very popular, or wood on the top, brick or brick accents, and then just about everywhere there's a concrete or cement driveway or patio or whatever. At least with the concrete, I'll use concrete on the right there, cement. It's pretty hard to find, not impossible, to find these surfaces that are completely crack free. So, we can almost always write down, if we're just looking for something to write down when the home seems to be in perfect condition, some cracks noted at, and then, fill in the blanks or whatever, backyard patio or whatever. We don't want to say there's 3 cracks in the patio, because if you have a picky buyer, and maybe there's still some lawn furniture on the patio and you can see 3, and again, you have a really finicky buyer. Once that inventory's gone, they'll say, no, there's actually 5, and that can kind of start the ball rolling in a dispute. So the word some is really good. It means more than one, but you're not really qualifying how many, and you don't really need to. And if you're wondering where to write this down, well, obviously there's a lot of places, but if you haven't got to it yet, or you've got a lot to say and you run out of room, don't forget there's this other observed or known conditions not specified above on the form. So that's always available. Excuse me. Now, stating the obvious, this is when you're showing a property, and let's say this is the property on the right there with the fencing, and there's something incredibly obvious right across the street, like it's a shopping center, or in this case, a school. A mistake that some agents make is that they say, well, this is so clearly there. Whether the buyers are purchasing the home for that reason or not, that's got nothing to do with disclosure. I don't really have to say anything because it's like an insult to the buyer's intelligence to mention it. But it really isn't, and that's no reflection on the buyer's intelligence. We still have to make a mention of it. Believe it or not, there are lawsuits where the buyers go into court and they're suing because they didn't get a good disclosure here, what they think is good or sufficient. And they say, we were so captivated by the home, we didn't even notice what was around it. And they kind of win in that because, people, really are into the house that they're looking at. So the issue with something like this is there's too many things to disclose to make a list. So you've got the gridlock in the morning and afternoon with the drop off and the pickup. You've got the weekend activities that maybe people don't expect to have at a high school or whatever this is. You've got the kids hanging around, probably this close or hanging on the sitting on the fence or sitting in the backyard. The list is too great and you cannot or you don't want to number them out or list them out. I'll give you a solution here in a moment. Let's see. I go everywhere. Where was I here? LA, obviously, La Cienega, again, I-10 or somewhere. Well, look at the house on the right. It's hard to get closer to a freeway than this home. So whoever lives in this home, they've experienced whether they noticed, maybe they got used to it, but obviously noise from the freeway, maybe people hanging around the on-ramp. They've got, let's say they mentioned those things and gasoline fumes. Well, a buyer, especially if, attorneys contact buyers all the time when somebody moves into a home. It's just like a plague. And the buyers are, for whatever reason, kind of litigation oriented. And they say, well, we're bothered by the fuel smells. They're just overwhelming. And some attorneys, unfortunately, will say, well, was that disclosed to you? Yeah, they mentioned that there's gasoline fumes. And the attorney said, did they mention diesel fumes? No. Okay, well, there's your lawsuit right there. And then the whole thing starts. So I'll give you an answer to this, but some other pictures. This is just one more I'll show here. This is a shopping center kind of near where I live, and I've been involved with in some legal issues here. So it's a big place. There's a Target on the left, a big box supermarket on the right. I think there's 5 buildings. It's about a half a mile long. I know a lot about it because I've been involved with it. Some nice view homes up above. And there have been complaints, especially the ones that are, near the Target and maybe the supermarket, that they expected that there would be deliveries and, vehicles, forklifts, whatever in the back. They just didn't expect they'd be going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, large shopping centers, large stores have deliveries in most cities, unless there's an ordinance or something, all the time. 24 hours a day. And so there's been litigation. Nobody told me that we would never have any time in a 24-hour period where we didn't hear trucks unloading. So we have to have a disclosure that covers everything, you might say. So let's get into, first of all, no matter how obvious something is, we do want to make a disclosure. We never want to say it's an insult to their intelligence to mention it because it's so obvious. So when we're stating the obvious, disclosing something that is near the property, may I suggest that we disclose what is there, never the details never the details of what may bother the buyers about what is there. So, for example, there's a freeway near the house, period. That covers all the things that you could mention if you tried to mention them all. The problem is you can't mention them all. There's just too many. Tires fly off the freeway. They're blown out. Again, the gasoline fumes. The diesel fumes. And it just goes on forever. But when we do like a composite catch-all disclosure, there is a freeway near the house. Don't worry about it, how to define near, just if it's going to be a factor if you were buying a home. That covers everything. And anything that they complain about, well, that's because there's a freeway near the house. You don't want to make a list. The list will never, ever be long enough. Excuse me. A school is close to this property. So that covers whatever happens to you or whatever happens to the buyer, especially it could be any kind of school. It could even be like a junior college or something. Whatever happens, kids hanging around, gridlock in the morning and the afternoon, drop off, pickup, and all the weekend activities and the band practicing. All of it is contained within that disclosure. And so better not to make a list of specifics. And to finish up on this point, with the shopping center, probably something like a shopping center is located behind this property. So whatever they complain about, the 2 a.m. forklift noise. Well, there's a shopping center behind this property, and not all shopping centers have that kind of activity, but a lot of them do, especially the big ones. This is a big one, with the Target and all that sort of thing. It's a good composite overview. When we make a list, it's too easy for a litigious buyer and way too easy for their attorney to come up with something that's not on the list. Okay, let me just look at the chat room here, see if there's anything. We do. By the way, I do have another seminar. I do have another sponsor that can't get in, and that's Lisa Masterson with Old Republic Home Protection, Home Warranty, and she's trying to get in now. Okay, from a rough draft disclosure to a final disclosure, you just sort of pen it out, and you're wondering, I can make this kind of briefer. This technique does not cost anything. You don't have to download anything. It takes like a half a minute. Excuse me. So let's say I'm in the kitchen, see a couple of stains like this. Well, that is a red flag because, kitchen water in the walls, and we've all heard those kind of horror stories. So I start out with what looks like 2 black mold stains noted. So let's clean it up a little bit here. We don't want to give numbers because maybe it's a little hazy. Maybe there's 3 or 2.5 small. We don't want to use colors. So we get rid of black. There's no way we want to write down mold. Mold is a technical term that's way outside of our standard of care. So we end up with a ideal disclosure, stains noted. That is a perfect description. We don't want to give numbers. They can be disputed. Small, no need to use small, large, don't want to use it. Never a color. And we never want to make a diagnosis that it's mold, even though it probably is. And we've all, again, heard the horror stories of kitchen problems, and, the buyer has to move out for a while. So we just kind of pare it down. A great way to do it is write out the disclosure, on a scratch piece of paper on your phone, whatever. What words can I take out of this disclosure such that it still makes sense is a good way to look at it. So that's rough draft to final disclosure. What about wear and tear items? Are they a good idea? Kind of things that are in every house that's been lived in for, a while. These are things like peeling paint here and there, wallpaper, scuff marks. Maybe you can kind of tell where people have been walking on the carpet or whatever. And generally, no, these are just everyday things that happen in homes that are lived in. You can kind of tell where people have walked on the carpet. They don't really rise to the level of disclosure. They may be something that the buyer wants to clean up or vacuum or whatever, but it really doesn't rise to the level of like a transfer disclosure statement or avid disclosure. If you start getting into the really minor, everyday, every property wear and tear stuff, you got to list them all, and that becomes untenable. You've got just way too many disclosures and way too much in the avid. It's kind of like there's this game, I've never played it before, but some of you might recognize it. It's called Where's Waldo? And Waldo is there. This guy, try to find him there. By the way, if you like the game, I'm sorry to say that he apparently got in trouble with the law, so he's out of the picture now. Anyway, Waldo is the meaningful disclosure that I want to get out just to prevent litigation, advise the client, whatever, the buyer. But if I have too many other comments, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle, so to speak, and there's way too much in the avid. So we really want to, is this something that's just common every day at every property, or is it rise to the level of disclosure? And if it doesn't, we don't want to mention it, because then we've got way too much information being conveyed, and then things that are really important the buyers never really notice because they're being bombarded with way too much stuff. Okay, I'll give you my opinion on this. Obviously, go with office policy, not with me, because there is some variation. Whether or not you should take now photos and advertising, absolutely, that's essential. I'm talking about photos during your Avid inspection. And by the way, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat area there, and I'll try to get to them before 11 o'clock. And also, if you, I might have mentioned this, if you want me back, you just invite me back. I've got lots of this stuff. So taking photos during a visual inspection. And now there's different programs, platforms. This Glide thing is probably the most popular. And if you've been around a long time, like I have, some agents would bring their, didn't have the phone thing, camera. They'd take their big family Kodak camera and take pictures. Now, I'm not talking about advertising. That's great. I'm talking about the Avid and disclosure. Well, and we all have phones, so it makes it really, really simple. But the fact that it's simple doesn't mean it's a good thing to do. Notice that on the Avid, it says we do a visual inspection. It doesn't say anything about any equipment, any device, whether it's camera or audio, or some agents bring like these things you plug into an outlet and you can see if it's grounded or not. It's way outside of our standard of care. So it's a visual inspection. That's what it's designed to be, competent and diligent visual. It doesn't say anything about bringing anything with you other than just walking around and being observant. If you do take photos, not for advertising, that's great, all day long, but as part of your Avid, you'll never take enough to satisfy an attorney that's going after you for this. You have to be careful about that. So the only exception I know of is when the rest of the house looks okay, and you get to the garage and it's like, oh my gosh, this is I can't even get in there. So what most of us do, and it's a great thing to do, is we kind of disclaim the room, like unable to inspect garage due to extensive personal belongings. And then usually a very important thing to add is, please contact me when the garage is cleaned up, prior to closing, of course, and I will be glad to return. And often we say at no cost to finish. Well, the sellers get too involved in moving out, and they usually don't get to this. But your disclaimer, if you will, or condition, I would be glad to come back when it gets cleaned up, remains or should remain as part of the file in perpetuity. And so anything that goes wrong in this garage, you will not or should not be held responsible for, because you have disclaimed it. And never try to climb over this stuff to look at first glance, that this is just not something I want to be responsible for. So we have that. Can't inspect, couldn't inspect due to extensive personal belongings. Contact me prior to closing, and the majority of time you're just never contacted. The sellers just get too involved in other things. So it's a good thing to disclaim it and keep that as part of the file, because you never know what's inside that garage. So a good lesson there. Let's see. Oh, we already did the rough draft thing. I shouldn't have reprinted that here. Let's get through here real quick. And
hey, Bob. I think Lisa's trying to get in. You're the host. I think you have to let her in. I can't let her in.
Okay. Yeah. Let me see here. Let's see. Make host. Rename. I know she's been trying to get in, and let me just say, the only option I have is put in waiting room, but I don't know if that's really gonna do anything here. She called me.
Maybe that may be an old message from Jackie. Maybe she wasn't able to get in. But
okay.
So maybe just continue on.
Okay, yeah, and she called me before we started, saying she was having a hard time getting in. Okay, this is a important one. Avoid, for your consideration, avoid completing the Avid during the home inspection. So, let me just mention something about just home inspection. No, that was not her. Okay, first of all, keep in mind that the state of California does not license home inspectors. We are, believe it or not, there are, I think at last count, 43 states. I thought we would be the first kid on the block on this one that license home inspectors. We don't. So you never want to recommend to a buyer, get a licensed home inspector. There aren't any. You can say qualified home inspector. That's okay, just not licensed. So anyway, let me kind of back up here. I'll tell you what is a really good thing to do if you are able to do it. And that is when you have the buyers, very, very, very often, it does varies around different parts of the state, but a lot of times the buyers who may not even live locally, they come to town, they want to be there for the home inspection. They want to meet the home inspector. They want to get a better look at the house, and they're going to follow the home inspector around. I don't want to follow the home inspector around when I'm doing my Avid. That's a really bad thing to do. So I know it can't always be done. On the listing side, you can usually kind of get in whatever you want, usually, excuse me. But on the buyer side, if you can, and I realize sometimes you can't, if you can get into the property before the home inspection with your buyers so that you can do your Avid by yourself, maybe the sellers are home or whatever it probably would be, that is better. Your liability is limited when you make an effort to and are able to get into the property before the home inspection. On the listing side, you can do it anytime because that's easy. But on the buyer side, if you can get in there, do your visual inspection, that keeps you within your standard of care. You're not watching a home inspector who's outside of your standard of care, doing stuff and picking up things. So that's a good goal. But anyway, let's say I can get into the property and I'm in the master bedroom. Well, just from this picture here, I don't see anything to disclose. I mean, it looks okay to me, whatever. But let's say my buyers are in town. They want the home inspection is going to take place. They want to be there. They want to meet the home inspector. And I have not been able to get into the property, or I didn't make an effort. The home inspector is going to take that painting off the wall. And let's say it looks like that behind it. This is an issue on many levels, but for me, if I was there by myself and there was a painting or a picture covering it, I have no liability at all because I don't move things out of the way. But now, it has to be dealt with eventually, but in terms of my liability stature, I'm okay. But now that the home inspector's there and my buyers are there and they call me upstairs or wherever and say, hey, take a look at this, because I don't want to follow them around. That's not good. They can follow the home inspector around. I don't want to because I limits my liability if I don't. Now it's a whole nother picture. It's going to be dealt with anyway. But in terms of my own liability, if I'm there by myself, since I don't move things out of the way, I really have no liability at all. It gets a little messy when I'm there and this is visible and so forth. So I got more in the notes about this, but if you can get in. And like the picture here, if I was there by myself, I don't see anything here to disclose. It looks okay. I don't know there's a bad deal behind the painting, but I have no liability at all because real estate agents in their visual inspection aren't supposed to move anything. It just changes when we see something that it still has to be dealt with, but our liability is more controlled when we are able to do that by ourselves and not move things out of the way. That just as a goal doesn't always happen. So to summarize this little part here, always complete the Avid prior to the home inspection. If repairs are being negotiated or pending, the seller said we want to fix this or replace the broken window. It's generally not a good idea to delay because sometimes it takes them too long. Things are rushed, just prior to closing, which is not good. Just do your Avid whenever you can. Don't wait till conditions are ideal according to the seller for you to get in there because they're never going to be ideal. And then even after you've done your Avid, when it comes time for the home inspection, and you know your buyers are going to be there, especially, you want to be there. It's a good idea to be there, but you know, sit at the kitchen counter or something. You've already done your avid. Let the buyers walk around, do whatever they want. That's, you know, they can do whatever they want with the home inspector. But I've already done my avid. My liability is more limited that way, within my standard of care, and let them do what they want. But if you can get your inspection done, your limit inspection done ahead of time, it's good. Can't always happen, but it's good to do. Okay, this is an interesting thing. Let's see, we have 11 more minutes here, so I'll talk fast, and again, invite me back if you want more. Are you, the seller, aware of any of the following? This is often, and I'm just going to take this arrow down to neighborhood noise problems or other nuisances. So we'll use this as an example. Notice that the form, first of all, it's asking the seller. It's not asking the either agent or whatever. Certainly not asking the buyer. But it's not asking the seller if these things exist. It's asking them. Can I go back? Whoops, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let me. What am I doing here? Let me get this off. Go back. Here we are. Really high tech. Not do they exist. Are you aware of them? That's all. So it's a really low standard of care. Are you, the seller, aware of any of these things? And we're going to go with the neighborhood noise problems or other nuisances. Let's go with the barking dog. This is seller who lives next door to a property, and you know, you've got the listing, let's say, or you could be either side of the deal. But next door, there's a dog that just never stops barking. Well, you think by this form, the sellers would have to disclose that because, I mean, they live there. But not necessarily, because it's asking them if they're aware of this as a nuisance. And there have been many stories where a seller used to have, usually they're elderly in age bracket. They used to have a dog. Let's say it's a German Shepherd. They really miss their dog. And the barking next door doesn't bother them because it reminds them of the dog that they love so much. So when you look at this form, it's not saying do these things exist, but are these aware of you as a seller as a nuisance? And they say, no, they exist, but they're not a nuisance. So neighborhood nuisance problems or other nuisances. So we got the barking dog there, and they don't consider it a nuisance, so they say no. Buyers move in, and this dog's driving them crazy. There may be no recourse here because especially when they go to court, and I've seen this before, the sellers, usually older, they're sobbing on the stand in front of the judge and saying, we really miss our dog. We loved hearing it bark. It sounded like Rover, our dog, or whatever, and it didn't bother us. So it's kind of a low I'm sorry with the arrows here, kind of a low standard of care. They can say the dog's driving us crazy and they have to disclose it. Or they can say, as I mentioned, we loved hearing it. It reminds us of Fido or whatever from years ago. So keep that in mind. The way it's worded is not really, is it a problem? It's, do the sellers perceive it as a problem? And there can be a distinction there. So never depend on your seller's perception of nuisance. If you know about it and you think it's a nuisance, it's a good idea to disclose it because most buyers are going to consider things like this as nuisances. So some advice there. Okay, what about the pack rat room? You're doing your avid thing and you open the door or whatever. It's like, oh, wow, a lot of stuff here. Well, you know, it's a sliding scale, like how much stuff is in your way and all that. If it's not too much, you're supposed to do it. Something like this, I think our first impression would be, no, there's too many things in the way. I have no idea if after all this stuff is taken out, buyers move in, they get out, they take the carpet out, all the material, all the possessions are gone, and this is what they see. Well, that, you know, I wouldn't say this out loud in a transaction, but I would think, well, this looks like mold to me, and this is going to be a problem. So it's very important that when you walk into a room, and this is pretty basic, but it's just not done enough. I look at tons of TDSs and AVIDs during the year. It's not mentioned very much, and we really do want to state extensive personal belongings, preventative visual inspection, or something like that. And also, depending, companies vary on this, but the norm is agent will return at no cost when the room is cleaned up. and I already kind of touched on that. It's almost never cleaned up, and the agent is virtually never called back because, escrow's closing, the sellers are panicking, and they're just trying to, move out, and it just never gets attended to. But what remains in the file is the agent, in this case, the buyer's agent, saying, I am unable to inspect this room because of extensive personal belongings. I will come back for free, and they're never called back. But that saves the day for them because they have no liability if they disclaim the room, and they were never called back to check it out. There's a story behind this. I will let it go. But anyway, I've got it in big print there to make it easy. But it's a great thing to write down when your first impression is, this is too much. I don't want to be responsible. I want to document that I could not look at the room, but, I'll come back, if they want me to. They just usually never call you back. But you'd go back if you were asked to. Don't forget, in this basic concept here about stuff in the way outside the home. So this is pretty common. Got shrubbery here. You never know what the side of the house looks like if there's a lot of stuff, or they have a boat and they've got wetsuits and all kinds of stuff piled up against the side of the house. We want to treat that the same as a room inside the house. This has got an awful lot of stuff in it, so something to keep in mind. So I like this. This will be in the notes, and you got to change it for the occasion. Extensive vegetation, debris, whatever, prevented a visual inspection of portions of the house exterior. It's a great thing to have there. What do you do if you see this? I say just forget it.
Wow.
Forget it and turn around and drive home. This is a real photo here, obviously, and just give up on that one, I think. Okay, let's see. As you can see here, I get into building permits and just all kinds of stuff. By the way, this is really short. Let me just get this out before we finish up here. Something that has been a problem, but it's becoming more of a problem. A lot of sellers have kind of high-tech stuff in their house for security, and they can pick up anything anybody says anywhere in the house. And so when showing a home, especially when the sellers are not home, I know this sounds pretty basic, but it's good to caution the prospective buyers, your clients. We're going to go in the house, sellers aren't home. If there's something that you don't like about the home, don't say anything about it out loud. That's going to offend them when they come home and look at it on TV and hear you saying it. And that sometimes gets the sellers mad, and then things just kind of go bad. Just talk about it in the car, just not inside the house. Let me mention. I think I have time to do the building permit thing, and this does vary a little bit around the state, depending on a variety of factors. Like downtown LA is treated differently than an area that say might be rural or whatever, but it is an important thing. Sometimes you can tell there's a room addition. This kind of looks like one. I'm not sure. This one definitely is a room addition. I don't think I would dispute that. But here, whatever, or about it. However it's discovered or determined or announced. And then the whole ADU thing, depending on different parts of the state. I mean, a lot of municipalities want a bunch of these things because their population goes up, tax base goes up, and I don't know if you've noticed, but at least I have. In my opinion, ADUs they're so much nicer now than they used to be, and easier to put in and all that. And even like a man cave thing like that would qualify. Well, anyway, when it comes to building permit and verification, when we're done, not now, look at the first page of the Avid. It says just two things. On the first page, California law does not require the agent to inspect the following, and there's a couple of things. One of them is public records or permits. It says it right there. Also on the first page of the Avid, by statute, agent is not obligated to pull permits or inspect public records. It's not something we're supposed to do. contractors that have been in the business for a long time often have difficulty in the permit verification, depending on what community or where it is. Is it unincorporated? And it can get kind of confusing, and it's way outside of our standard of care. So we're cautioned twice on the first page of the Abbott about it. So I know companies have different policies and so forth. I will just say that helping a buyer, prospective buyer, confirm building permit issuance that is meaningful and effective, or helps the seller with that, is just a really high liability task. And we're really not supposed to be involved with it. I know it can be a little delicate at times. Buyers are in town, staying at a hotel, and they're waiting for their car to get there, and they have time, and they want you to help them drive me to the property, drive me to City Hall. But I like this wording. Make sure it's okay there with Steve. But buyers are advised to check with local municipality regarding building permit information. It's already kind of out there, but it's a good idea to repeat it when there are building permit issues and so forth. So anyway, because I have a time issue here, I've got to say adios. I will. A couple of things. I will email the notes to Steve, and I've got another seminar coming up, but in about an hour and a half. You can invite me back anytime you want to. I have just hours of information on this. Thank you to Lisa with the Old Republic Home Warranty or Home Protection, Elite Group Home Inspections, Legal Services of America. Steve, thank you for the invite. So I'll say goodbye. I'll get the notes off to you, and again, invite me back if you want.
Great to see you, Bob. Thank you so much for bringing us this great information. We really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Bye.
See you around.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Have a good one.